We are recording the interview of Bob Oppenheim. This interview is being conducted by Ann Moore and Bradley Wang from the Wright State University's Veterans Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Bethany Village in Dayton, Ohio. It is 2 p.m. on August the 14th, 2015. So thank you for being here, Bob.
You're welcome.
We're just going to start with some biographical details. Where and when were you born?
I was born in the big town of Coldwater, Ohio, December 26, 1926.
Okay. And who were your parents?
My dad was Bernard Oppenheim, mother Irma.
And what were their occupations?
Well, Mom was a housewife and Dad was a businessman.
What line of business was he in?
They made farm implements.
Okay.
My grandfather invented the distributor paddle on the back of a manure spreader.
Okay.
That was the patent, and from there they made manure spreaders, and from there it just grew and grew, and they were making all kinds of implements, side rakes and tedders. Corn pickers became a big product. Long time ago.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Do you have any siblings?
We have 5 kids, 9 grandkids, and at the moment, 11 great-grandkids.
Wow. So you had brothers and sisters, or?
I had 2 brothers, 2 sisters.
Okay. Were any of them ever in the military?
My next oldest brother was in the Air Force.
Okay. And what branch were you in?
Army.
Army. I was in the Army too.
You were?
I was, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to fly in the Navy Air Corps so bad, and they'd called me up to Detroit, and I'd passed my physical, and I was only 17, and the guy says, well, I can't swear you in, you got to go home and get your papers signed. And my dad had passed away when I was young, and Mom wouldn't sign the papers. So we disagreed for several weeks, and finally I went to college and got drafted. Always disliked my mother for doing that.
And so what were you doing before you entered the service? Were you in college?
I got in 1 semester at UD.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
What were you studying? Or what did you intend to study?
I had a double major, business and economics,
Okay.
business org.
And then they drafted you after your first semester?
Yep.
Did you end up going back?
When I got out of service, I went back and finished on the GI Bill.
At UD?
Yep.
Yeah. It's a nice school. So you said you were in the Army,
Mm-hmm.
and you were drafted. Do you remember what it was like when you left for training camp? Sort of maybe what you were feeling? Or...
Yeah, I left from our county seat in Salina on the bus over to Columbus. I think we were there a night or two, then over to Indianapolis, and from there down to Camp Blanding, Florida. I took my basic blinding during the summertime. It was nice and cool.
I bet.
And the swamp water was high.
Do you recall any of your instructors? Do any of them stand out?
No, the one thing in particular that I can remember about basic was we were out in the field one night playing cops and robbers, and there was a area probably, well, maybe 75 or so feet away from me, and they were sending up those aerial flares. And when they exploded, they lit up the whole countryside. You were to fall flat on the ground, play dead for a while. Well, something happened over that area, and a flare went off accidentally and went up into a cadreman's back. And I'll never forget that man, his yelling and screaming with that several thousand-degree thing in his back burning.
Wow.
They threw sand on him. They put a shelter half, a tent half across him, everything. You couldn't burn it out. He died, I think, 2 days later.
I bet.
But that scream in the night, phew,
That's quite a memory.
that was a baddie.
Mm. Did you receive any specialized training?
Yeah, I trained in communications and cryptography,
What's cryptography?
coding.
Okay. So how did you adapt to military life? The physical regimen, the food?
It wasn't much problem because I'd loved to be outside before when I was a kid. Did a lot of shooting. So I loved to go in the rifle range, and I did pretty good there with the rifle. And we had some older married guys in our outfits. And it was amazing how the Army, in a matter of a couple of weeks, these guys just were like youngsters over again. They could stay up with us and do everything. It was interesting.
Huh.
I went to Blanding and then for advanced training over at, what was it? Fort or Camp Rooker in Alabama.
And so your peers, were most of your peers drafted as well, or?
Just my one brother.
Okay, well, I mean, when you were serving, like in basic training, was everyone drafted?
Oh.
It was in your platoon, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, especially the married guys.
Yeah. How did that affect everybody's demeanor? Like, was everyone upset that they were there, or?
No, it was all just one big happy family.
Yeah.
We
See?
got along great. We lived in temporary huts down in Blanding, Florida. And there was a big lake, almost perfectly round in camp. And we'd go outside and into the swamps and stuff and do, cops and robber games and
Yeah.
that stuff. And a lot of times then we'd come back in, especially if we came back in the early evening and around the lake, and we had some good platoon leaders. They'd march us out on the beach. We'd drop our packs, strip down to our shorts, and we'd march into the lake and cool off. It was great.
So then after your AIT and during the war, where did you serve?
I was a year in occupation in Japan.
In Japan.
Yeah.
What are some memories you have of being in Japan?
A lot of memories. I moved around quite a bit. I joined the 33rd Division Quartermaster Trucking Company in Kobe. And even though I trained as a cryptographer, I ended up as a motor parts man. Typical.
Right.
I could have been a cook. Yeah. And the 33rd Division disbanded. The colors came home. And there was a motor officer and I that we had had some difficulties with each other. And I lived with the motor mechanics. And all of them got a nice plushy job. They were sent up to I-Corps headquarters in Kyoto, which was good duty because it was never bombed. And my motor officer saw to it that I got sent down to the 24th Infantry Division. God bless his soul. So I walked in there, I dropped my duffel bag one day, and the first thing that, I don't know if he was a major or what, he said, "Is there anybody here that could type?" And I thought about it, I guess, for about 10 seconds. And for the one and only time in the Army career, I volunteered. And I held up my hand and he said, "Soldier, stay afterwards." So I got assigned then to regimental headquarters company. Soft duty.
Nice.
Yeah.
But Japan was, it was a mess. All the cities were firebombed by the B-29s. And, I stopped on the train. We were in Hiroshima. The troop train stopped there for several hours. And we got off, and there was just nothing left. I mean, such devastation, you know. But they killed 70, 80,000 people. You never forget when you've seen devastation like that. And the Japanese people had nothing. I question whether or not we really needed to drop the second bomb. And they, you know, they made predictions that up as high as 500,000 American soldiers would perish in the invasion of Japan. I find that hard to believe. Those people, they had nothing left. They were pulling wagons, they were even pulling automobiles with horses. And some of the cars had been converted over to charcoal burners. You know, it was like a boiler sitting on the back bumper. Mm-hmm. And it was not unusual to see rats on racks outside of a little rebuilt tin shack, drying for food.
Wow.
They were down and out. People by the thousands rode the trains. We used to say that they had no place to live, so they were on the train. At least they could find a place to sleep and be dry.
Right.
But they'd open the gates at the train station, and thousands of people would rush in, and they rode on top of the cars, in front of the coaches, between the cars, out in the cow catcher in front of the engine. It was something.
Wow. How did you feel about that, seeing all of that?
I felt rather privileged.
Yeah.
I can remember we'd knock off our mess kits in the big GI can. And the little Japanese kid, the boys and girls, they would dive head first in there to come up with the garbage. You know. That was a banquet for them.
Right. Wow. So did you ever end up being close to any fighting?
No, we were shot at once in Kobe. We lived just off the end of the pier, on the land side. And some Imperial Marines that had been holdouts on an island came back. And there was a big sheet metal warehouse, and it was filled with a lot of Japanese small arms. And some of these die-hard Imperial Marines got in there and set up their beloved 25 millimeter machine gun and started to fire at our building. We were on the second floor, and I remember the glass falling out and hearing the thump, the bullets were going into the wall, and I didn't know what was happening. And I had a buddy slept on the cot next to me, Joseph Sconia. He was our welder. And Sconia reached up and pulled me down, and he says, "Get down, somebody's shooting at us." But that was the only time.
Huh. What were your duties during the war?
Well, when I was parts man for the trucking company, I had a room probably half the size of this with automotive truck parts. We had 50 or 52 2.5-ton Jimmy trucks that we operated. And I had the replacement parts and stuff for them. And there were 12 motor mechanics and a motor sergeant, and we all lived together. So I kept the parts and tried to keep things supplied.
Did you ever get to use your cryptology training?
Never did.
Is that how you learned how to type?
No, I took typing in high school.
Ah.
Yeah,
Good thing.
came in handy.
And so when you were at the headquarters, you typed?
I kept down the 24th Division Battalion headquarters. I kept the officers' records.
Okay.
And we had one guy from Raymond Sundquist, captain. And I think he'd been an All-American out in Oregon or someplace, a basketball player, I believe. And he was married, had a family at home. And he always used to say, Oppenheim, tell me when I'm going home. And he says, I'll make it worth your while. And I'd call up to division headquarters, had a buddy up there on the other end of the phone. And we keep track of guys with how many points, we're going to go home in a few weeks or so. And I got the word one day that so many points were going, and I told him. And before he left, in a week or two, whatever it was, he brought over a fifth of state-sized bourbon to me. Yeah, he was a good guy.
Okay. What kinds of friendships or camaraderie did you have in the military?
Oh, I had a bunch of good buddies. One guy, Joseph Svetty, Joe taught me how to play chess, and sometimes we'd draw fire duty together at night, and we'd play chess. And the guys were all good. We shared things, and we took care of each other. And I think all of us went through periods, on downers. And the guys would slap you on the back or kick you in the rear end or what have you. There were good buddies, good times.
Were you able to keep in contact with any of them afterwards?
I did with 3 or 4 of them afterwards. Then I lost contact.
Yeah. When you were over in Japan, how did you stay in touch with your family and friends?
Well, I had my high school sweetheart, and I wrote her several times a week. And my mom, maybe once a month or something like that. The old slow GI mail.
What did you do for recreation when you were off duty?
Drank sake. That was good. Down in Okayama, that was further down the island, of Honshu. We built a horseshoe court or pit, whatever you called it. And somebody found some horseshoes someplace, I don't know where, but that was about the main thing. And I had some buddies up on Hokkaido, northern island, and in the wintertime they did some skiing.
Oh, wow.
They got a lot of snow up there. They had 3-4 feet of snow on the ground for the winter.
Wow.
Yep.
Where were you when the war ended?
Uh, I was home on leave, my one and only leave while I was in service. And the two bombs were dropped. I can remember some of the people saying, well, now you won't have to go back. I said, don't I wish? Yeah. What branch were you in?
Army.
Army?
Yeah.
Station where?
Well, I wasn't in very long. I was just in Fort Leonard Wood and then Fort Sam Houston.
Missouri and Texas?
Missouri and Texas, yeah. Then I broke my hip and I was useless.
Broke your hip?
It was a stress fracture. I don't know. It
On
just
the obstacle
appeared.
course or something?
I guess. I don't know. I thought it was a pulled muscle for a long time. So you had to go back then after your leave.
Oh, yeah.
Did you go back to Japan after that?
No, I was home from training here in the States
Oh,
on leave.
okay. Gotcha. Got my timeline confused.
I didn't make that very clear.
When you did end up finally getting out and coming home for good, how were you received by your family and the community?
Oh, well, they'd had a lot of, quote, experience in guys coming home. I came home late.
Mm-hmm.
And we just, welcome home, we're glad you're home, and life went on.
Was a warm welcome, though?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
good. How did you readjust to civilian life?
Well, I went back to college as soon as I could, and in some ways, that was like the Army, being with fellas. I lived in the dorm for a while, and then a roommate and I, we moved off campus. But I don't know, there were a lot of similarities. You had that regimentation, you had to go to class this time.
Right. So that maybe made it an easy transition?
Oh, yeah, very much. And of course, we had the GI Bill, and you got your $75 a month. That bought a little beer at the Double K on Brown Street.
Help you with your studies?
Help with studies.
And what did you study in school?
I had a double major, business
Business.
org and economics.
Okay. And then you just went into the working life after that?
I went into the advertising agency business and spent 42 years there.
Wow.
Yeah. Every day was different.
Keeps it interesting, I
Yeah.
suppose.
It was a very, very interesting business.
Okay.
We did primarily business-to-business advertising. And I had clients from construction equipment to boat building on the Ohio River, to egg processing equipment, paperboard, packaging. It was fun. I got out into the field quite often, traveled with a client salesman. It was a very interesting business.
Sounds like it.
Mhm.
Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
No, I'm not a joiner.
Yeah.
I never joined the VFW or Legion.
Me either.
I like my own time.
Yeah. So how would you say your wartime experiences affected your life?
I think for the better. In fact, I also believe that every man should have to go through some short period of training. I think it would be good. The discipline, the regimentation and stuff. Get them away from their computers for a day or so.
And outside.
And outside.
Are there any lessons, life lessons, that you've learned from military service?
Yeah, respect for other people. You do that, you develop buddies in the service. And I think you also learn that life's too short to go around with a chip on your shoulder, And I've been lucky. I'm going to be 88, and I still got fairly good health. I still have my wife, and the kids. They're pretty blessed. No complaints.
That's good. How has your military service affected your feelings about war or the military in general?
Oh, I hate war. I don't think that our military can be policemen to the rest of the world. I just don't think it's possible. And I know people say, well, you're an isolationist. And I don't think I'm an isolationist, but I think pull the military back here at home, train them, teach them the new technologies and things like that so they're ready. But you can't be fighting these wars all over the world and expect to win. And if you do win, what do you win?
True. What message would you like to leave for future generations when they view this video?
Oh, I think number one, be thankful first. Thankful that you live in this country, because I think it's the greatest country in the world. And when you see some of the other places, you get a much bigger appreciation for America. My wife and I have traveled a fair amount, and we've got a good comparison after seeing some of the European countries and then Japan. I think we ought to go back to some of the basics. This idea of doing away with cursive writing, I think is atrocious. I think every kid should learn how to write cursive. And gosh, I can remember in grade school, the ruled yellow pads making those O's and the letters and stuff. But the kids today, it's a button they push. I think they're missing a lot.
I suppose it puts them at a disadvantage too, should the computers stop working.
Yeah. Well, I saw in the paper, what was this morning, all the Kettering school students are getting tablets, 7,000 plus of them.
Wow.
Even kids in kindergarten are going to get a computer.
That's a big responsibility for a kindergartner. Wow. Yeah, that seems to be the direction it's going, huh?
Yep, technology. And it's so impersonal. Facebook. My son-in-law put me on Facebook, and this was several years ago, and the first time I opened it up on my iPad, here's my own picture. And I said, how in the hell did you get my picture in there? Take it out. It's telling people, what time you went to bed and how many beers you had and stuff like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, sometimes I take pictures of my dinner. Look what I'm eating.
Yeah, one of these days I'm going to try to take a selfie.
There you go. I have not done that yet.
I haven't either.
Oh. Is there anything that you feel like we haven't discussed or that we should add to the interview?
I think you know me pretty well by now.
Well, yeah, you seem like a great guy.
Well, thank you.
And you picked the right branch.
Would you tell my wife that?
I will. I'll let her know.
I got something. So you were drafted, if my timeline's right, you were drafted into the Army,
Yeah.
and about the time you wrapped up your training and went home on leave, before you were ready to go to Japan,
Yeah.
that's when they dropped the bombs.
Yeah.
So what was that feeling like? Did you knew the war was over before you actually went to Japan, right?
Yeah.
Was that a huge relief knowing like,
Oh,
okay.
yeah. Yeah. I went over on a Liberty ship, and that was a trip I'll never forget. We took water over the bow 15 days straight. Oh, it was rough. We had guys never got out of their bunk for 3 weeks. Took 21 days to get to Japan. Everybody was darn glad that they weren't going to be an invasion going into
Yeah.
Honshu or because that war would not have been very pleasant. Yeah. Long time ago.
You glad you experienced, though, the experience you had?
Yeah, I'm glad. But we've got some good friends here that were in combat. Had one friend here, he passed away a couple of years ago. But he was on a destroyer, first in the North Atlantic. They were hunting U-boats, doing some convoy duty. Then they went to the Mediterranean, and finally they went to the Pacific. And he said, we didn't know what war was until we got up against the kamikazes. He said, 10 of the boats in their destroyer squadron were hit by kamikazes, including his boat. He said, that was hell.
Wow.
Those suicide guys.
Yeah.
But, when you think of those wars and even these present crazy things in the Middle East, that's military. The atomic bomb was a war on civilians. They were there to wipe out cities and stuff. And when you take out, 70, 80,000 people at a crack, non-military, it's bad.
Yeah.
Them's my thoughts.
I thank you very much for sharing them. It was very interesting.
Yeah. I can't complain about my life. I'm thankful.
It's a wonderful thing.
I just wish she'd gone to UD instead of Wright State, He's not saying much.
I mean,
UD's much more expensive.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I don't think UD has a veterans voices.
And what?
UD doesn't have a veterans voices.
Oh. They got a basketball team.
True. Very popular one.
Like every 4 years, they have a basketball team.
Yeah, not right. But, yeah, our grandson went to UD, engineering grad. He's got a good job with GE Aviation now. But when he went there several years ago, I think it was about $35,000 a pop.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive. My son told me he wants to go there for his junior and senior year. I told him good luck.
How old is he?
19.
You,
I'm 41.
I wouldn't have believed that.
Thank you.
Would you?
Good answer.
I put it on him, didn't I?
He's smart.
It was,
Yeah.
We're just wrapping up.
have any of your children, grandchildren followed your footsteps and joined the military?
No. Nope. They don't see the need and the benefits in it like I do.
They weren't there, they don't know.
He's hunting something.
Yes, he is.
It's, one of the guys lost a gold like thing. I don't know.
Oh,
It was a guy with the Korea thing. Yeah. I don't know.
was he one of our interviews?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was in here. It's alright. Keep going.
Okay.
I can't believe you're that old.
Me either. I don't know what happened. I was 16 and I turned around and I was old.
Well, everything pauses in the military. That's what I've learned. Like, I didn't age when I joined the military. I signed up and when I was 19, and I came out looking like I was 19.
Yeah. How long were you in?
9 years?
9
Really?
years.
Wow.
Whew.
Yeah.
I thought you were 19.
What branch?
Air Force.
Air Force?
Mhm.
Did you fly?
Nope. I was a crew chief on F-15s and A-10s.
Yeah.
It's a great time.
I wanted to fly in the Navy, those big patrol bombers. But Mom screwed that up. Boy, you don't look that old.
I'm 31.
You got in there early, man, didn't you?
I was 20. Turned 20 in boot camp.
Yeah, my brother, he was in 5 years, Air Force, and all here in the States, except his last bit, and he was assigned someplace overseas, and everything was winding down, and he ended up going around the world, completely
Wow.
around the world, back, got his discharge.
So you just spent the whole time traveling, moving around?
Yeah, just that, about his last year.
So like he'd go one place and they'd shut down and they'd send him to the
Yeah,
next? and-
someplace else, he just, he never got into combat or anything.
That's good.
He was a radio guy. He ended up teaching radio classes down at Scottsfield, Illinois, isn't it?
Not sure.
I think outside of St. Louis. And he helped open a base down in Arkansas or someplace. And he even ended up over at the airport in Columbus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he really did get to join the service and see the world,
Oh,
huh?
he saw the world, yeah. He was a crazy guy.
Cool. Well, I think we've about hit everything.
I think so.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Oppenheim.
You're more than
Thank
welcome.
you. So that was a wonderful interview.
You say that to everybody.
I don't.